Hi guys, my name is Samir and welcome to my first Hibernate tutorial. And in this tutorial I'm gonna show you how to use Hibernate framework to insert a data in the database table. Now this is the most basic simple Hibernate application. Like here it is where it begins. So I'm gonna explain everything in detail, and all the other applications like insertion, deletions, updations and selections will be like similar. So starting off, first I want to use a database so that I can insert data in the data table. So I'm logging in my database. I'm using Oracle 10G Express Edition database, and I'm going to insert a table in it. Alright, so my table is created now. Now I'll explain. I'm using a table called employee table, which is having 3 columns: ID, employee name, mobile and email. As you can see, ID over here is the primary key, and ename is of variable character type, mobile is of number type, and email is of variable character type of 20. So this table is created. Now I'm going to describe this table. So this is the description of the table. We have employee table and 4 columns: ID, ename, mobile and email. Now starting off with the program, I'm using the Eclipse IDE. Alright, it's taking time to open up. Alright, this is my Eclipse IDE. So alright, so I'm going to create a new project. So file, new. The project is gonna be Java project, and I'm gonna name my project Hibernate 1, or I can write Hibernate Tutor 1 and finish. Alright, so I have my project available to me, source, and there's a source folder there. Now for every program we write to insert a data or to do something with our relational database, we need to first have a connection between our program and the database which we are using. For that, now in Hibernate we don't define connections as we used to do in JDBC. We have our configurations of connections and other thing in one XML file. In Hibernate configuration we have to use 2 XML files. But let's starting off, first we need to have a connection so that we can connect to our database, and for this we need to configure like what is our database you're using, what's the URL, what's the username, password. So where is this thing configured? These things are configured in an XML file that is called the Hibernate configuration file. So I say new, other, I type here XML, and it's going to be XML file. Next. Now the naming convention, there is some specific naming convention we have to use for the Hibernate configuration file. The naming convention is it should have .cfg, .xml naming convention. This is important. If you don't give this extension to your file name, it won't work. The file name can be anything. For now I use Hibernate, so my configuration file name is hibernate.cfg.xml. Now .cfg.xml is a compulsory extension. This thing can be anything. Instead of Hibernate, you can give any name, but you must give .cfg.xml extension, or else the Hibernate framework won't understand that this is the configuration file. So now we finish it. Now we have the XML DTD. Now we need to write a DTD for the configuration file. So we need to write one more DTD so that it can understand that this is the configuration file. Now where to get the DTD? As we all know, we have to use Hibernate distribution 3.5.6 final. So I'm gonna open the Hibernate distribution, and in that I have some jars and some folders. So I go to the project folder, and then I go to the core folder, source, main, resources, organization, Hibernate, and there I have the two DTD files for the two XML files we'll be going to use. Right now I'm writing the Hibernate configuration file. So I need the DTD, this one, for this file. So what I do is I open it up in my Eclipse browser. Now it's open. I just close this. Now this is the DTD which I need to use in my configuration file. So copy it and paste it here. Now I'm gonna see that it's in one line, space over here, and this too. Sometimes if you don't keep this in one line, it doesn't work. So just keep it in one line, and there's supposed to be space in between this and in between this. That's compulsory. Now let's write our XML files to configure the connections and other things. Now starting off, first thing I press Control space and you see Hibernate configuration. This is compulsory. The Hibernate configuration file starts with this. That is, it starts with the DTD name, doc type name. That's going to be the first tab in every file we use. Now press Control space again, we get session factory. That's going to be the next one. Now in the session factory we write various properties where we configure the connection. Now let's say I'm writing a command. Now this is for writing connecting to the database. Now I'm going to write some configurations, some properties that are going to help me to connect to my database. That's the Oracle 10G XE edition, and to my table. Now for that I need to write some property. Alright, so what's the value here going to be, and what value should have? What should be the property name and what should be the property value? Now in our Hibernate distribution folder we have documentation library project. The Hibernate distribution framework provides it with built configurations for connecting to our database. Like, I'll show you how. We have the project folder and you have the etc folder, and there you have a properties file called the hibernate.properties file. Now this properties file contains all the properties that we can use in our configuration file. So I'm going to open the properties file in my editor. This, I'm closing it. Now I open the properties file. Now see here, as I goes down, there are various database names available: Hypersonic SQL, H2 database, MySQL database, and Oracle database, which I'm using. So what it is, see, we have two divisions in this. There's a space, and this side of it is a property name, and this side of it, it's the property value. So that means if I'm going to use MySQL database, I have to declare these properties, and they are going to have the respective property values. Now I'm going to use the Oracle database, so there are some various property names and some property values which we have to use. For example, I'll start first with the driver class. Now the property name for the driver class is hibernate.connection.driver class, and this is the value. So I copy this and paste it here in my property name. Now the property value is going to be oracle.jdbc driver.oracle driver. Copy this and paste it. Now the next property, Now the next property I'm going to use is the hibernate.connection.url and the localhost. This is a property name. Now you can choose which you want to use. You are using a Oracle enterprise version, or using the express version, and what's your number and all. You can check it out, and you can change the URL based on your need. So hibernate.connection.url, and I paste it here, and the value, I copy the value, jdbc.1522, copy this and paste it here. For me it's 1521, so I'm going to change it to 1521. Now the next property which I have to use is the dialect, Oracle 10G dialect. Now what does the dialect means? See, the SQL language we use in MySQL and the SQL language we use in Oracle may differ in syntax in a small way. So now the Hibernate framework generates the SQL statements for us. We don't have to write complex nested queries and complex. We don't need to know SQL to use Hibernate framework. That was the point of the Hibernate framework, that one programmer, Java programmer, may not necessarily know SQL programming. So the Hibernate framework generates a query by itself based on what framework you're using, and based on using that particular, like if we are using Oracle 10G dialect, it will generate the SQL query which supports the Oracle 10G versions. Now if I use the MySQL dialect, it will generate the SQL query on which will work on the MySQL database. So I have to declare my dialect next. Hibernate.dialect, copy this, that's the property name, and the value is going to be Oracle Hibernate organization is this one. Paste it. Alright, now my driver class is done, my URL is done, my dialect is done. Now I have to define my username and password. Now this username and password refers to the username and password which I used to log in my Express Edition server, Oracle server, and my table, created my table. So the one which I used to log in. So I'm going to copy the username, copy it, and create a property. And the username is going to be Samir, and I'm going to create one more property, and it's going to have the value password.